There's an opportunity in this new economy to not only take on the economic challenges, but the environmental challenges that we're facing. Organizations like Green for All, the Apollo Alliance, and many others are looking at this huge opportunity of economic environment. And how do we forge a new economy? How do we create green jobs, which most importantly must be good jobs? Becoming more environmentally responsible not only provides an opportunity for job creation, but also provides an opportunity for us to address our high energy costs and other areas of this system that we're seeing through global climate change. Increasing federal investment in job creation has a real opportunity to boost jobs. People at Center for American Progress, people at Institute for Policy Studies have all said that our money is much better spent as a job stimulant on green jobs than if we spend it on tax breaks or on military spending. So we know that the return on our investment is really there. It's important to note that these green jobs are good jobs and that we are creating a pipeline for opportunity, that it's not only about the job but the opportunity to access that job, that we're not only supporting living wages but we're supporting access to education and to training. We're dealing with work support issues, we're dealing with transportation issues, we're dealing with public support issues. Because people of color have typically less income and less wealth, they have less to fall back on in hard times. And so we see the safety net, the work supports, the public benefits just totally going away. And that's a real problem for us. And when I talked about earlier where the policy opportunities are, policy is great if it's there, but it needs to have some kind of punch behind it, some kind of action. And too often policies have been designed to protect someone. Well, I'm going to push you way beyond. This is not about protecting. This is about redistribution. This is about reallocation. In my mind, what we really need right now is Robin Hood. We need a strategy to start truly creating an equitable society and sharing our assets with all of those that don't have it. Congress should institute a wealth tax surcharge for those who have households of net worth of over $10 million. This small thing, we're not talking about a lot of people, but if you put 3% on households with net worth over $10 million, we could have $300 billion a year. It's amazing how small things can have huge impact, and that's the real opportunity that we have right now. We also need to eliminate the tax preference for capital gains, which could yield $95 billion a year. Only the wealthiest right now make significant income off of capital gains. Many Americans, or these Americans, are paying a 15% tax rate, while a police officer is paying 35% tax rate on his or her income. The capital gains tax should reflect the progressive nature of the income tax rate and rise as capital gains increase. Again, almost $100 billion with a relatively small opportunity. Now, this is not about how do the wealthy take care of the poor, but it is indeed one strategy. So not only do we need Robin Hood, we need Superman. We need to not only begin to level the playing field that we've talked about for so long among the rich, but we also need to create opportunities and true pathways out of poverty and look at wealth development opportunities for the poor. To address the nationwide precipitous decline in wealth, a comprehensive national savings program is necessary. And many of us have heard, these are not new things, many of us have heard about individual development accounts and they've worked successfully locally. When will we start scaling what works instead of trying to reinvent something new? As the recent turmoil in the stock market has shown, the one thing that people still have are their good old savings account, provided their bank is still open, but they have their good old savings accounts. This is an opportunity to create an entry for people to access our mainstream financial system from which many people of color and low-income communities have been marginalized for years. We also need to not only look at savings, but look at wages. We know that the minimum wage is going to go up. It's going to be $7.25 beginning in July. We also know this is far below a living wage in many communities. We also know that while they're going to give people a raise, they're not giving them a cost of living allowance. Doesn't really seem to make sense. If I run a company that's failing, I get $100 million a year, I get a bonus. But if I'm actually working hard, I don't get the recognition that costs around me are rising. President Roosevelt called the federal minimum wage an essential part of economic recovery. So it only makes sense in this massive economic recovery effort that we would indeed do the same thing. Again, this is not about creating new stuff. We have things that already work. We just need to make sure they're used better. The recommendation that I have is to expand the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. We know for a fact that this has truly advanced people out of poverty and into opportunity. We also know that if the Child Tax Credit, which is $1,000 per child, was given to the poorest of families, we could potentially move 2 million children and 1 million parents out of poverty. These are not small numbers. We also need to fix our broken safety net. We've heard of all the horror stories. The media has done a great job of telling us the woman in Illinois who got 5 checks. for 2 kids. What they haven't done is talking about the woman who has 2 kids who's never gotten a check, who is still waiting, who's caught in the matrix of bureaucracy to be able to get the supports that she deserves and that have been mandated for her. As more and more people are relegated to low-wage work, it's going to be extremely important that we give them the support and the infrastructure to be able to truly move out of poverty into wealth accumulation. We know that under Clinton in 1996, the welfare reform system was significantly restricted, and many people continue to fall through those cracks. Programs such as food stamps, Medicaid, Head Start, and child care assistance, we all know are vital, not only to low-income families, but to all families. Therefore, it's important that we begin to look at this means-tested benefits. We begin to look at what people need to move out as opposed to what we think they need to move out. Any time that someone, if they're not employed, can actually have access to child care and access to health care, but as soon as they are employed, and they're only making $7.25, they no longer have access to those benefits. It just seems completely counterintuitive. And finally, as Drummond mentioned, I am a capitalist. I'm all about making as much money as possible, but using it wisely. And one of the craziest things to me, as I was a finance major, is that if you're poor, you actually pay more for many things in this country. And so to me, as we look at the new re-regulatory opportunities within the banking industry, this is a time for us to truly reduce the high cost of being poor. Despite having less incomes, we know that lower income families typically absorb a larger part of the burden of caring for their local infrastructure. In many cases, we know that they are lacking access to institutions that oftentimes provide these pathways out of poverty. In African American communities, there are 3 times more payday lenders than there are banks. I wonder why that is. It's not because people aren't clamoring to get out. Some people want Bank of A, some people don't. But the reality is that the payday lending industry is making $4 billion just off of fees. So there's no incentive to change that, but this is a real opportunity. When you have 81% of people of color who have access to some kind of account, many cases attached to some kind of secured card, while almost 100% of everybody else has access to financial institutions. This is really about legislation that changes, that is not new, that builds upon what works, and truly opens up equal access. Economically, we know that people of color, blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, and Asians have suffered disproportionately because of structural racism. And we know that there's a web of policies that have continued to oppress them and keep them there. Eliminating this wealth divide is essential not only for their success, but for our success. It is only when we are able to move past the joy and the guilt-freeness that we have when we say we're helping them, it's only when we change that and say we're helping us. We're helping all of us. We not only have to stop talking about the intellectual marginalization, but the real marginalization. This speech should never be delivered again because this room should be a celebration next year of much more diversity, not only in terms of race, in terms of gender, but in terms of class. The progressives have an opportunity and a privilege to talk about issues that people are dying for every single day. That privilege needs to be redistributed along with the wealth in this country. If we institute systemic wealth-building programs that help everybody, if we repair and reinvigorate the decimated watchdog policies that we have, if we actually target the 2009 stimulus dollars not just toward tax breaks, but to those things that we have seen have created the American dream, like homes, like jobs, like families, then we truly can indeed have a more balanced economy and, more importantly, a more equitable union. I thank you for your time, and hopefully I will not see you again.
So I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of what Momentum is. I hope you'll think about coming. There's a sheet in your bags. We also have another Momentum session inside AFN tomorrow morning, I think. So please join us then. And thank you so much to the speakers. This was just a wonderful little sampler, and I hope stimulated your own imagination. Take care.